Hi everyone, I finally got Stellarium on my computer and I wanted to make a quick video because there's some interesting things that I wanted to point out. And this would be the view from Jerusalem, and the time is right here. For some reason when I click on this it's not showing up. I had to minimize the window so that I could do the recording. And so I'm not sure how well this is going to work out, but I want to go ahead and try it. But this is what it would look like in Jerusalem, looking at the sky. Of course, this would be 19 hours, 37 minutes, and 33 seconds. And so that would be about 7:30, 7:40 in the evenings, right around sunset. So as you can see, you can still see Virgo, and if I remove the atmosphere, then you can see it even better. And so this is what it would look like in the night sky. If you were to move up this time a little bit, then it would be even darker, and you could see it even with the atmosphere because it would be getting darker. But Virgo would be going a little bit lower into the atmosphere, but it's still above the horizon, and it's still where you can see it all the way through at least the middle of September. So I think you would still be able to see what's going on in the constellations. Now there's something really interesting that I wanted to point out, and if you remove the ground you can see this better. As you can see, right below Leo is this serpent over here. And this reminded me of what I was talking about in my last video when I was reading Genesis 49:17, where it says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse's heels, so that his rider shall fall backwards. And so I wanted to point out a couple of things that I've noticed, because I was also looking at the Gospel in the Stars, just trying to remember some things about the constellation Virgo that I wanted to talk about. But there's a star right here in Leo's tail, and this could easily make up part of Virgo's crown. This is the star, the nebula. It's alpha. It's actually the beta star. It's the second brightest star in the constellation Leo, and as you can see, it's very close to Virgo's head. I'll try to zoom in a little bit so you can see it right there. And I just want to quickly show you this configuration over here that someone had come up with that could possibly make up the 12 stars in Virgo's head. And I'm not sure if the star, the nebula, is included in this configuration, but I just wanted to point out that you could easily make a crown with the stars in Virgo's head. I think it's right about here where you have the star 57779. So you see that HIP 5779. Of course, this is a Hebrew year 5777. So it's right next to the star, the nebula. Okay, and as you can see, there's several stars all around her head, so you could easily make a crown with those stars. But there's something very interesting about the star, the nebula, and I'll just read this here from the Gospel in the Stars. It says, the second brightest star is the nebula. In Arabic, it means tail of the lion, but Dan, or din, is the Hebrew root for judge, and bo is to come. So it is possible that the nebula means the coming judge. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Genesis 49:17, where it says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse's heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. Okay, and as I said in my previous video, there's always a good and an evil that seem to take place at the same time. And so Dan means judge. And I'm just waiting for my computer. You can see that here in the Hebrew, the word Dan, it means a judge. It's saying here that it comes from another word that is actually Strong's 1777. Of course, this is the Hebrew year 777. And so this is just a variation of the same word. Okay, so Dan means judge, and the star Denebula comes from the word Dan in the Hebrew and the word bow, which means to come. Okay, and incidentally, you also have this Deacon or Deccan constellation. I'm not sure how you pronounce that word, but you have this secondary constellation here that's connected to the constellation Virgo, which is the constellation Bootes, which means I am coming. And this pictures a shepherd holding a staff in one hand and a sickle in the other hand. And so I've talked about this constellation before, and I've also talked about the constellation Coma Berenices, which I want to talk a little bit more about. But I just noticed this about the star over here, Denebula, and so I wanted to point that out first. And you see this is in verse 17 where it talks about Dan shall be a serpent by the way. And I actually counted the stars in Hydra over here, which is a serpent. And as you can see, it's right below the heels of Leo in the constellations. And I had actually counted 18, but I might have counted one of them twice. So I put in the stars in Hydra so I could see how many stars there are. And according to this article over here, there's actually 17 stars in Hydra. Over here it says Hydra, the water snake, resembles the creature from which its name derives, with its huge body slithering across 100 degrees and covering 3.158% of the night sky, making it the largest of the 88 recognized constellations. And it's interesting that there's 88 constellations because, of course, they all tell the story of Christ, and 88 is the number for Christ. It's actually 888 is the gematria for Jesus Christ, but 8 is also the number for eternity. And so if you read on, you'll see that it mentions the 17 stars over here. It says, despite its huge size, the actual shape of Hydra is made up of an asterism of only 17 stars, although some depictions include 20 stars. So that's interesting. You have 20 and 17, but it's usually 17. And it says the constellation contains no first magnitude stars, but it does contain about 100 stars of the 6th magnitude and brighter, including the 6 of magnitude 3 and 4, which make up its head, and the 2nd magnitude star, which represents its heart. And that would be this star right here, Alpharoid or Alphafard. This represents the Hydra's heart, or the serpent's heart. Okay, so there's 17 stars in the constellation Hydra, so that would be 7 plus 10. And when you go to Revelation 12, you see that the dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns. And then in Revelation 13, again, it mentions the 7 heads and 10 horns, but the difference is that the crowns are on the 7 heads in Revelation 12, but in Revelation 13, there's 10 crowns on the 10 horns. And then it mentions the 7 heads and the 10 horns again in Revelation 17, where it talks about Mystery Babylon. And over here it says, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And then in verse 7 it says, and the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. And then when you go to the full chapter of Revelation 17, and you go to verse 16 and 17, it says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom to the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. So the 10 horns give, or the 10 crowns on the 10 horns give their kingdom to the beast in verse 17. Okay, and it's in verse 17 in Genesis 49 where it says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, and an adder in the path that biteth the horse's heel, so that his rider shall fall backwards. And there's a few more interesting clues that I wanted to talk about that come up in the Greek that I wanted to explain. And this word right here actually means to become. So when it says Dan shall be a serpent, it's actually saying he will become a serpent in the way. And then this word right here means to lie in wait. And I could show you these words, but I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, you can see this word over here. You can see the definition. It comes from this word, which is the root, and it means to lie in wait. And then this word over here is another word for path, but the root of this word is the same root that you get the word tribulation from. You can see the letters here are T-R-I-B-O-U in the Greek. It's the root of the word tribulation. It's also the same word that Jesus used when he said to take the narrow path. You can see that over here. It means a worn path, a beaten way. And in all of these examples, it's talking about making the path straight for the coming of the Lord. In all 3 of these examples here where this word is used, and as you can see here, it means to thresh out. It's the root that you get the word tribulation from. Okay, but this is the scripture I was looking for. It's interesting that it comes up in Matthew 7:14, which is 777, but it says, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Actually, the word for narrow here is another word that means tribulation. I actually got it confused, but you can see that it's the same root word. It comes from the same base. So both of these words mean tribulation. You can see that here it says suffer tribulation, and it comes from the same word over here, which is the word that's used in Genesis 49:17, which also is a root word for tribulation. Okay, so the adder is in the narrow path, or the path that means tribulation, when he bites the horse's heels and the rider falls backwards. Okay, and this was coming up in verse 17. There's 17 stars in Hydra. And then over here you see the birds, or the ravens, which were talked about in Revelation 19:17 and Genesis 40:17. And then this is the cup of wrath over here. But I'm about out of time, so I'll have to continue with more in the next video. Thank you.